Welcome to the Financial Fun Podcast with your host, Tammy Johnston. This is where Tammy talks with business owner parents and grandparents about the interesting and important subject of money. We promise this to be an interesting and open discussion, as that's how we learn best. And now, here's your host, author of the Financial Foundations. Financial Foundations is a series of books to teach kids about money, goal setting, and living a balanced life. Find out more at financialfun.ca. Here's Tammy Johnston.
First things first, I would like to thank all of my listeners that have subscribed and reviewed my podcast and invite you to subscribe and review if you haven't yet. I appreciate you helping us to get the word out and making financial literacy a safe and welcoming subject for kids and adults. Second, please check out my podcast website, financialfun.ca, where you will be able to access past shows, find out more about me and our guests, as well as purchase the beautifully illustrated Financial Foundations books that teach kids about money in a fun, healthy, and holistic way. Hello, and thank you for joining us once again for the Financial Fun Podcast. Today our guest is the lovely Carrie Chitsey Wells. Thank you for joining us, Carrie.
Thanks for having me, Tammy.
So, Carrie, what is your business? What is it that you do?
So I'm a serial entrepreneur, and my current been kind of innovator in mobile and digital technology. My current business is One Touch Video Chat, and we provide video chat technology to companies to enhance the customer experience, increase sales, and so it's a platform as a service for businesses to connect to consumers through face-to-face mobile video.
Oh, that is absolutely amazing. One of the things that I'm loving more and more about today and going into the future is how much technology has improved and made it so that we can be personally connected to people all over the place and on the go.
Yeah.
So, and what is your family situation, Carrie?
Well, I'm married and I have a 9-year-old son, Max.
9-year-old. Oh, so he's in that lovely fun age where he's learning and experiencing and still appreciates mom and dad.
Yes and no, I guess. No, he's definitely in that phase, but it's the 1.5 million question phase of how the world works.
Ah, see, that's a good one. Wait till he's a little bit older and he turns those teenage years and he doesn't talk to you at all anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm hoping for that or getting sad about that coming.
It'll be mixed. It will be mixed.
Yeah.
So, thinking back to when you were a kid and that, when did you first discover that money was important and something you should be paying attention to?
Well, I was blessed that I grew up with mom and dad that were entrepreneurs. So I grew up from a young age of knowing money and knowing how that worked. And I started working just about Max's age in my family's companies. So I didn't have the luxury of having a mom and dad that had an 8 to 5 and got 2 weeks of vacation and all that fun stuff. I mean, I spent my summers in the family business. I spent my nights and weekends helping out and I earned my first paycheck where I actually had taxes taken out at 12.
Well, you say you didn't have the luxury. As a person who has become an entrepreneur and has been for my adult life, I don't think that's a good drawback. I actually think there's a lot of pros to that.
Yeah, I mean, as a business person now, it's definitely pros, but I think as a kid, you see your, schoolmates and so forth, have all this time with their parents at night and go on these vacations and, not have to work. And, my lifestyle is a little bit different. And I'm sure my son, thinks the same of my husband and I, since we both own companies that, it's kind of the same, but no, I wouldn't change it for the world.
So what were some of the things that you noticed, like being a child of entrepreneurs, that was different from your friends that had parents that, like you said, had the normal 8 to 5 jobs?
Well, as an early age, I understood, the financial stress of owning a business and, hearing my parents talk about it and talking about payroll and paying employees and, revenues and things like that. I mean, I got it. And my dad from an early age always told me that, you need to make sure, that you get a good job or own your own company. So, you have financial freedom and you're not dependent upon others. And I mean, he knocked that into my brain, early on. And I started to get a taste of working and making money. And my parents were very good in that, we had a great life and they'd, buy me all kinds of stuff. But, there was obviously a trade-off of, okay, you earn money. You need to, if you want this new outfit, great, we'll take you there. But, you got to pay for it. And so I learned the value of a dollar pretty early on.
Well, you said that your parents were actually open about talking about financial stuff with you?
Oh, yeah. And I do the same with my son now. I mean, he probably knows more about finances at 9. I mean, he could tell you what profit is and margin and taxes. I mean, he could go through all of that with you. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Oh, you are a woman after my own heart, dear.
Yeah, you should be talking to him.
Well, you know what? We might have to just do that. But because one of the things, like I said, if you are raised in a family where you can talk about money and business and different things like that, the kids end up being so much more successful because they learn about it and they're not afraid of it, and they'll ask questions and they make much better decisions because they've been exposed to the information, and like I said, they know that it's all right to ask and learn, and I love that.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, I think that, the society today is, very different. The kids are growing up in a very different environment that we were raised in. And, I try to make sure that, my child doesn't grow up being spoiled and expecting things and knowing that you have to work hard from an early age to make it, and, not the, as I like to call it, the generation it's never good enough.
Well, now with your son, like you said, you're very open about talking with him, and he knows a lot of stuff. What are some of the things that you're noticing that he's asking about? What is he curious about when it comes to money? Like, what are the questions he's asking?
Well, we just got back from, we have a beach condo. We just got back from there and we were driving, and so he's enamored right now with cars. So every time we pass a car, he wants to know how much that car is. How much would a car payment be? How much is his insurance going to be when he's 16? Like, he's 9 and he's already...
Oh my!
So we talk about that, and then, he's very enamored in bills. And so, I always joke with him that, when you taking long showers and paying water bills and leaving on the lights across the house. And so I start, telling him how much utilities are and water, and, he's like, man, I'm going to have to get a really good job to pay for all this stuff. So he knows the whole gamut of finances.
Oh, I am just blown away at how well you guys have been handling this with your son. Oh, this is amazing. So you say that your husband's an entrepreneur as well.
Yep.
How was his childhood any different on this subject from yours, or were they quite similar?
No, he doesn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. He comes from, dad worked, for government, police. Mom didn't, but mom was very good at managing the money and, very frugal. And so he's probably a little more extreme than me on trying to make up for spending because he didn't have it in his childhood. But, he was definitely, raised with, money in mind of, his mom very, doing whatever she could to utilize the dollar. So he's got kind of that background, but completely opposite of not coming from entrepreneurs.
Which is a much more normal thing. So with him, like, we can understand you going into being an entrepreneur, because most people, they either do it later or, like you said, they come from a family like yours. So what encouraged him to go into being an entrepreneur when he was not from that world at all?
I think he comes from kind of the ad agency background, and I think, he was just really good at it and kind of worked for a big company and kind of learned the dynamics and then really realized that, he could, have more financial freedom by doing that himself. And so he was had an opportunity to do that and, grew that company up, astronomically over the years. And then we actually own a company together, and we have our independent companies, and then we have a joint company together. So we're constantly, running multiple companies. And I think for him, it's just, he's got that no fear drive and ambition.
Oh, that's amazing. And what does your son think of having you guys working together?
Well, he hears us talk about it all the time, and I think he thinks it's cool, and he likes it, and he really likes hearing about business, and, we'll be having a conversation, and, he'll literally, jump in and start asking questions. I joke because I was working from home the other day, and I was on a conference call, and, it's summer, and he was out, and he came and I thought he was going to interrupt my call, and he holds up a sheet of paper and it says, "I have some questions when you're off." And he had written down, ROI and MOU and SOW, and he wanted to know what they meant. And he's been writing down all these words that he needs to understand. So I thought it was kind of comical.
Yeah, I can totally see how that would be a bit comical, but he's asking questions that a lot of people start a business and don't even start asking those questions until they've already been doing it for a while.
Oh yeah, no, he knows what a return on investment is, and he knows what a non-disclosure agreement is, and he knows what a statement of work is, and he's gonna be, he always says, "Can I take over your company when I'm older?" And so I have to tell him, what that entails, but he's definitely on his way.
So has he thought about starting a business on his own or anything? Does he have the entrepreneurial drive yet, or is he just in kind of learning mode and paying very close attention, obviously, to what mom and dad are doing?
Oh no, he's constantly trying to start his little businesses in his elementary school. His problem is the next shiny object, but yeah, we've been through candy businesses, we've been through Minecraft card businesses, Pokemon card businesses, art businesses, now we're homemade fidget spinner business. I mean, we're all across the board on our entrepreneurial program.
Hey, that's awesome. That's the best way to learn, like try all sorts of different things. And what are some of the things that, when you've been watching him, what are some of the things you've observed about him running his businesses?
Well, he always starts off with some, really high price. And so we always talk about, is the market going to buy it, right? So we have to ration it back. And then I already have, in his mindset, he always tries to cut the corners, right? So we were talking about his card business. It's, they were handmade, kind of like baseball cards. And then it went to, well, we have a copier and the laminator, so if I just copy them, so he's already scaling, right? Yep. He's already like, well, my margin will be higher if I don't have to hand do each one, and I can, sell them for less, but produce more. So he's already got that mindset, but, I try to let him know that we still have to have the quality on the production.
Very, very much so. Very much so. So what was the first business he started?
Well, so when I was in middle school, I had a very successful candy business prior to the vending machines. And so he's heard all kinds of stories about that. So the first business was the candy business. Because he realized that could go to Costco, buy some candy, and then crank it out to all his buddies. And so that was kind of the first effort on that.
So I know that he's asking a lot of questions of you and your husband and paying attention there. Is he reading anything to be learning on his own, or what does he think of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's reading any, business books for that perspective, but, he loves Shark Tank, he loves The Profit, he loves Billion Dollar Buyer, like he watches all those shows with me. So he's into more the visual side of watching it. And, he'll out of the gate say, oh, that company, their margins are too low, or, he has very good commentary on those shows, but he definitely loves watching those shows with me. It's funny because he'll say, do we have any Shark Tanks on DVR? Or, he'll ask, what new episodes we have to watch and learn.
Oh man. I'm just floored. Like this, I want to meet your son.
Yeah.
He just sounds so interesting and amazing.
Oh, he's interesting. He's quite a character, that's for sure.
So how does he interact? Like, how is he different from his friends, or is he encouraging them? Or are they asking him questions, or how does that work with his peers?
Well, it's funny because his best friend that lives a few doors down, his mom and dad are CEOs too. And so they both kind of have that entrepreneurial spirit. So they were, he came home at the end of the school year and they were going to start a company together, and they all had roles and responsibilities and job titles and, equity percentages, and, they were going to build the website, and, they bought a domain and, the whole 9 yards, and they were talking about Shopify and, but if you take kind of that friend out of the mix, I mean, and I compare it to, my nieces or nephews who, aren't being, kind of raised in that same mentality, it's night and day. I mean, he's very mature for his age.
Oh, that's without a doubt. Just a few things that you're telling me, I'm going, this sounds like a guy in college, not
yeah,
not a 9-year-old.
Yeah, definitely.
And so what are his aspirations like when he finishes school? Like, he's got a ways to go and stuff, but is he thinking about just starting a business right away, or is he thinking about like going to school for something, or what does he want to do? Like, he sounds like he's really got things planned out already.
Yeah, well, I mean, we obviously put in his head that he's got to go to school, number one. And so, he's definitely, we have the conversation all the time of what do you want to be, right? And that changes because he's 9, obviously, but it's funny because he always thought he wanted to be an engineer because he's very good at building things. And, he's been doing, 14-year-old Legos since he was, like 6, right? So he's very advanced, but, then he kind of realized that, now he's all about the money. So he's like, well, how much is the salary of an engineer? And does a structural engineer make more than a civil engineer? He's like all into that mindset, right? So he's constantly asking me like, what's the starting salary out of college for this role versus that role? And so, but he's very into advertising, just because my husband and I's background in, what we do in mobile and digital. So I think he'll probably end up taking a route of some type of marketing technology if I had to, place a wager here. Sure, we'll come back to this podcast in 10 years and see if that's accurate. But he just has such an eye for branding and marketing. I mean, just what he sees in a commercial from a branding perspective. I mean, I have, MBA marketing people that work for me that can't catch some of this stuff. He's just very into branding.
Well, the thing is, he could do engineering as well and turn that into a business and just start off, because a lot of very successful business people start off in a job and then build on their business skills and see how they can take it. I have a very good friend who is an engineer, and he was an employee for a few years, and then he decided to start his own company, and he much prefers that. But, yep, he is an engineer.
Yeah, well, that's what I told him is, he's got to go to college and, get a good job and do that before, starting a company out of the gate, without real world experience, usually it's a much harder road.
What are some of the things that you're feeling? Because, like, your son sounds absolutely amazing. But what are some of the things that you and your husband are going, okay, we need to be working on teaching him more of this, or is he just basically just so advanced that he's taking care of asking all the questions as it goes.
No, I mean, I think the biggest thing, with kids today and him is, I had him open up a bank account, when he was 8 because, I told him that, the days of getting birthday money and Christmas money and immediately going and blowing it instantly on toys that 30 days from now, he doesn't want to have anything to do with, that he needed to start saving his money. So I've really been, we look at the balance in his bank account. If he wants a toy, I literally make him go to the bank, pull it out, look at the deposit slip so he understands that, this isn't just the world of paper money, and understanding, his thing always is, so when you pay with a credit card, like, you don't have to pay that back, right? And I'm like, no.
If you don't pay it back in time, you have to pay more.
Yeah, so just understanding, how all that works from a financial situation. And so, literally having, the people at the bank always laugh because, I make him, go up to the counter and tell him how much he wants to take out and look at his slip and see how much he has in his balance. And then, when he actually goes and buys something, because he, for a while didn't understand when something's $25, there's taxes. It's not, you don't hand the person $25, right? So he'll always say, well, how much is it with tax, And so he'll understand that. And then I make him pay for it so he understands, how much it was so he can count his change and really understand that side of the money. So that prepares him for saving and, managing checking accounts and bills at an early age.
Oh, extremely important. I remember the first time, because my daughter's a bit older, but we've been doing all sorts of stuff like you have for years, and she wanted to buy something and she'd saved up for it, so she gave me like the $25, and they go, no, I need like $26.50, and I had to explain to her, no, sweetheart, there's tax on that.
Right.
They don't like taxes.
Yeah, no. And I always get the question, well, why do we have to pay taxes? And I'm like, still as an adult, you're going to be asking that question.
Well, certain taxes we don't have a problem with, as long as they're done properly, but unfortunately that really isn't happening across the board.
Yeah, that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah, that's a completely different podcast. So, to finish up here, if you could make sure that your son understands 3 things about money so that you and your husband feel like you've been successful as parents, what are the 3 things you want your son to learn and know?
I think just that most importantly for my son or anybody else is, kids understanding the value of a dollar. So I think breaking it out and, understanding, backing into, okay, if you make X amount of dollars, X goes by taxes, you're living off of, the net. I think that's number 1. I think number 2, just the appreciation for money, right? I think kids today, don't have an appreciation for money. It's just mom and dad buy everything and they don't appreciate. I try to relate to Max is, okay, let's take somebody that works at, a restaurant for minimum wage. Like, okay, you want a $20 toy, that person has to work 3 to 4 hours to buy that toy minus the taxes, right? So relating it back to practical things in relation to an hourly wage, I think, because then he goes, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't buy that, right? Then I think the third is, the giving back side. We're fortunate and, we, take them to church and, all that kind of stuff. And, kids get a perspective that their household is how everybody lives. And, most kids aren't exposed. And so we always try to relate it back to, okay, well, there's kids out there, especially around Christmas time and others, there's kids that aren't getting any toys this year, right? So, do we need this much stuff? And, just the appreciation of money, right? Because we live in a world where we live in our bubble and we think that everybody lives in that same bubble regardless of what bubble we live in. And that's just not the scenario. So teaching kids that at an early age, whether it's through volunteering, whether it's through, community, services, which we've taken them to church, whatever it may be for that particular person, I think is super important.
Mm-hmm. Well, those are great things. I am so looking forward to finding out all the interesting and amazing things I know your son's going to be doing.
Yeah, you have to stay on his track.
Well, yes, and we'll have to get him on the podcast probably soon.
Yeah, you should start, having some kids on the podcast to interview them about money. See what the wizards know.
That would be great. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be on the show.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
Enjoy your weekend.
You too.
Before we leave each other, I would ask all of you listening to please subscribe to and rate my podcast. A review would be most appreciated, and feedback is always welcome. Whether it be a comment, future topic suggestions, and or questions you or your kids would like to have answered in the Ask Tammy column on the financialfund.ca website. Please feel free to check me out on Facebook at Financial Foundation's Children's Books, on Twitter at Financial Fund, and Instagram at financial.fun.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Financial Fun Podcast. Join Tammy Johnston again next week. For more information, please visit financialfun.ca.